Well, feeling good. All right, let's just refresh and get things going here. Make sure that we can see what's happening. All right, starting in a couple seconds, you guys. Hope all are well. Hope everybody is doing fine. All right. We will be starting in a few seconds. Here. All right. Here we are right here. All right, what's going on? Ruth in the house. What's happening? P, what's happening? Hope everybody is well. I am excited about today's show. Today's show is really specifically about understanding who you are in relationships. Thank you so much for checking this show out. My name is Tone Duncan. You're in tune with the Truth Seekers every Tuesday, 7 p.m. It is my privilege, it is my pleasure to hang out with you guys and talk about the various things that we search for truths and answers in. In this segment that we're in right now, we're talking a lot about relationships. Most specifically, we're talking about who we are in the relationships and the kind of relationships that we have the tendency to attract. I hope you enjoy the show. I'm always excited about the kind of shows that we bring, and it's all about you in these shows. So in order for these shows to be what they have been and to be even better than the ones we've had before, we have to like, we have to comment, we have to share. Kurt, what's happening? Yeah, listen, it is so exciting. Today I am not, and I'll say this again, I'm not in my shirt and tie, and the primary reasons I'm not in my shirt and tie is because I have been advised by my fashion consultant to lose the shirt and tie for right now, and just to kind of relate back in an informal way and talk to you, because you know what? We're all the same. This is all conversation. Sometimes a shirt and tie can be a little bit of a moat between the people that I'm talking to and the day-to-day lives that we live. So for that reason, I want to make sure that I kind of get out of the monkey suit, if you will, and just sit down and talk to you guys about the things that are important. One of the things that I want to talk about is today, I want to really speak on understanding who you are in a relationship. The focus that I have today is I'm trying to figure out if you may be part of the communication problem in your relationship. I sit down with customers, with clients, with friends, with just people who want to know more about personal development. And they're always asking me about, well, who am I in the relationship? You know, more specifically, what is it that's going on with me? So today I want to kind of share with you, I want to get into a conversation where we discuss more about who we are. You know, what kind of communication problems exist in a relationship and whether or not you are the one who is the catalyst of these kind of problems. You know, it's really important because one of the things that I think is really an issue here is that we end up with people we don't actually like because we don't know how to engage, we don't know how to connect, and we don't know how to grow relationships with people in a healthy way. And a lot of this, believe it or not, has a lot to do with the way that we were raised, the way that we were taught to react, the way that people reacted to us. And you know, it's unfortunate, but you see this often, and that is that we kind of carry some of the issues, we carry some of the negativity, we carry some of the false concepts into the relationships that we're in because that's the way we were raised. I mean, how many of us have been into a situation where we truly just were who we thought we were supposed to be? And so I want to talk about that. But first, before we go anywhere, I want to spend some time talking about relationships. You know, it's better to be in a healthy relationship than it is to be in any relationship at all. If you cannot find yourself into a healthy relationship, then you really have a problem. You know, and today I want to talk about that because we suffer from this. Candy, what's happening? Hope all is well. Thank you, social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. It is always a privilege to hang out with you. And today I want to remind you guys that we're not only just commenting, but we're sharing. Let's like, let's comment, let's share. Because again, you know, it's better to be healthy alone than sick with someone else. We got to know this, and because this is part of understanding where we are. we need the opportunity, we need the focus to see who we are in a relationship and try to start to build the kind of person that we want to be so that we become attractive to those we are attracted to. See, because too often we think that it's always what the other person's doing and how we react to it. But sometimes we have to understand that we could be the one that the reaction is being caused from. We could be the one that, unintentionally, even sometimes unbeknownst, we're creating the problems that are. One of the things that I think we don't understand is we don't understand how to listen. I mean, listening is actually not about deciding what's next to say, but it's really about thinking, what is the person trying to get across to me? Too often, and you guys know exactly what I'm talking about in relationships, we have a tendency to pause our conversation to allow the next person to talk, but we're really just in anticipation of the very next thing that we want to say, because we don't really listen. Listening is an art. My mother used to tell me all the time, she used to say, you have 2 ears to listen, 1 mouth to talk, so do twice the amount of listening and half the amount of talking. As you can see, I run my mouth a lot. I hope you think that means I listen a lot more. Hey, this your boy Tone Duncan, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. It's the TruthSeekrz conversation. And in this segment, in these last few weeks, we've been talking about relationships and personal development, who we are in the relationships, and what is a solid relationship. What is a healthy relationship? Too many times we think that listening is just a courtesy. We don't understand it. It is a necessity for growing a strong relationship. We have to learn this. There are techniques in advanced listening. One of the most important things that I need to talk to people about when it comes to advanced listening, one of the most important things is understanding, and I'll say this very simple, is understanding how to listen with your mind and with your emotions, not just with your defense system, not just to catch them up in something that they're saying that's incorrect, not just to be able to say, well, I didn't agree with what you said, but to intimately listen. Shay says the question is, are you really listening to what that person is actually saying, or are you just listening to what you want to hear? This, I think, is a major issue. Mike, what's happening? Ruth says, I had to retrain myself, on how to listen and how to respond. Yeah, because, here's the problem with that, is that oftentimes we are taught to listen by people who didn't do a very effective job in listening to us. We usually felt very overwhelmed. We usually felt as if somebody was not giving us a fair shake. We usually felt as if somebody was going to immediately attack us. They were just looking for one loophole, one problem in what we said, and we spoke so defensively. But here on the other side of having a poor listening technique, sadly, here's what happens. What happens is that the people who really want to deeply speak and get a good, solid understanding are turned off, because they don't have an opportunity to speak. They don't get a chance to get a word in edgewise. And this is a problem, because your willingness to listen doesn't work. Shay says that response mechanism is a two-edged sword, especially if you weren't listening or paying attention to what the person was really saying. Oftentimes when we listen, we have to listen to more than just the words. We have to listen to the body language. We have to look at the eye contact. We have to listen with more than just our ears. We have to do a full body listening experience. When a person talks, you can listen to the rhythm of their conversation. You can look at the face. You can look at the hand gestures. You can look at where their shoulders are. And you can tell really how deeply the conversation is. I want to say what's happening to Tammy. I want to say what's up to Tina, to Kirk. I want to say what's up to everybody who's tuning in. Remember, like, comment, share, Lance over on Instagram. What's happening? To all my peeps, hey, what's happening? All right, so here's the deal, right? One of the things that I've noticed is that when it comes, and I'll say this again, when it comes to listening, listening is something that is done with intention. Intention. I don't know how many times I made a courtesy listen, but it was like a cursory listening. It wasn't a deep, indebted, you're my friend, you're worthy of expressing yourself kind of listening. And I think this is a personal discipline. This is a discipline that I believe wholeheartedly is one of the primary reasons why there's so many relationship issues. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you can't listen to your brother, if you can't listen to your coworker, there's no way in the world you're listening to your significant other. If you can't listen to your boss, if you can't listen to your underling, if you can't listen to people who you trivialize, it is the way you practice to listen to the people you care deeply about. So I'm telling you, you need to focus on that. Mike says, the nonverbal is sometimes more important than the words themselves. I agree with you, Mike. In my opinion, I honestly believe that it is even more important because sometimes the words get in the way, but our communication is first and foremost through the body. I want to say what's going on to Big AG, to Mike, and to Talisha. What's happening? You guys remember, like, comment, share. Let's grow this conversation. Let's really get this thing going. You know, the opposite of not being a good listener, or may I say not even the opposite, but one of the problems is you tend to be the one who's talking too much. Body language, tone, and energy is everything when communicating. Listen to this. I'm telling you right now, it is a full package deal. This is one of the reasons why I think real conversations should never be done on text. It should never be done on social media. It should never be done on the phone. I believe that when you have an imperative, important conversation, something where you're speaking deeply from the heart, when you are talking about things that you find uncomfortable to articulate, when you're talking, when you know you're going to walk somewhere that is unique to the relationship, I believe wholeheartedly that you need to have a sit down, a face-to-face conversation. Too many times we lose our conversations because we lose one of those avenues, one of those very important pathways towards expressing ourselves. All right, so when you have something really important to say, please stop being the one who does it on a cell phone call. Be the person who says, hey, let's meet up and sit down. You know, one of the things that I think we do too much too is I think we meet, sit down, and drink. And when we've been intoxicated, especially under stress, we have a tendency to say all kinds of things. So let's not do it. Let's sit down somewhere in a sober mind. That means not even coffee, because the caffeine could excite you. Believe me, I'm a highly excitable person. I can tell you all about it. You want to be somewhere to sit down and really be able to express yourself. Some people, they think better when they walk. So one of the things that I say, a good thing to help you to listen better is to walk. That works out some of the anxiety that you have. Because sometimes, you know, let's just be honest, we have a little bit of anxiety. We have a little built up insecurity about how the conversation might go. We're a little defensive. So I think sometimes just taking a little walk just to stimulate the brain, you know, the blood going back to the brain, the oxygen helps you to articulate yourself, to be a more in-depth thinker, you know, and these are important things. But as I was saying, one of the problems with not being a good listener is having a tendency to talk too much. You know, people might assume that you're talkative because, you know, you are confident, or worse than confident, is that they'll think that you're some kind of narcissist, like you're all stuck on yourself, you know. Oh, this person is egotistical. All they do is talk. All she does is just go on. You know, here's the thing is that we have to learn to have an economy of conversation. You guys, what an economy of conversation means is really put your language to the lowest common denominator you can. Get the most out of what you're saying with the least amount of words. It's so important, you guys, you know, to not be so long-winded, but at the same time, make sure that you're getting all of your feelings expressed. Yeah, Mike says, master salesmen practice using deceptive body movements to divert one from their language. Doctors do the same. And, you know, here's the thing, too, is that when you get to know somebody, when you have that connection with somebody, you can see when they're being false. Tammy says, when you communicate, it's very important not to do the blame game. Oh my God, talk about it, please. But as I was saying before, you know, the reason lawyers get away with that and salesmen get away with that, Mike, is because we don't know them, you know. So they can play a simple kind of game with you a little bit. But once we get to know them, once we can see the intimacy in their words, once we can see what their facial expression looks like when they're truly speaking from the heart, when we can really listen to the rhythm of their conversation, I think that those kind of things don't really work as well on us. And I agree with you, because spin doctors spin at any given time. And, you know, I believe this, you guys. I believe the most important thing is listening, but listening more than with just your ears, with your mind, with your eyes, with your spirit, with that inner self that you have, you know. But talking too much, you guys, Talking too much is one of the major issues that we have, because talking too much really tells a person that your opinion is more important than theirs. I mean, this is one of the issues that I've seen too many people have. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. You know, when you sit around and you have this kind of mindset where, let me get these last few words so that we have a good understanding. See, when it's your words that dictate a good understanding, you almost know without question that you're walking the wrong way. And we get this way, you guys. We get this way where the only way this relationship is going to work is if I tell this person such and such is such a thing. Well, here's the problem with that. The problem is that that's a good way to start, but it's not a good way to finish. You know, one of the great African tribal leaders that I studied, he would go to all the different tribal leaders, but he would never speak until the end. The reason why is because before he wanted to get anything out of his mouth, he wanted to thoroughly understand who he was talking to. He wanted to thoroughly feel what the conversation, what the mood was, what the need of the person he was speaking to, because he knew that at some point he would be able to speak effectively towards the information that he had to give. You know, so let us understand this. Speaking is an extremely important part of a conversation, but it is done best when you completely understand the person you're talking to and how your language will be received. What is the emotional board it's going to bounce off of? What are the deals that's going on with this relationship? Too many times we talk more than we're willing to listen. This is what's happening now, and we need to focus on that. You know, here's the thing that most of you know is really when a person really stops wanting to be around you, when they really feel like you're incapable of communicating. And again, what am I talking about? I'm talking about us, individuals, not the next person, but when we are the communication problem in a relationship. Again, this is your boy Tone Duncan. Every Tuesday, 7 p.m., I have the opportunity to bring this conversation live and direct with you and to you. Candy says, and when someone does all the talking, sometimes they don't want to hear what the next person has to say. Well, to me, this is when you start to have more than one of the symptoms. Not only are you a poor listener, but you talk too much. Not only do you talk too much, but you don't know how to listen effectively, to the point where if I was to cut you off 3 minutes into your conversation and ask you, do you even remember what it was that I said? You can't remember because you are so emotionally invested into the conversation. You are so personally, emotionally connected that you cannot even use that cognitive part of your brain to rationalize in an intelligent way what the real conversation is. You know, and that to me is where we get some serious problems. And how do you know this? How do you show when the person's so emotionally connected to the conversation that they're not even using the frontal lobe? They're not even trying to use that special part of the brain that makes us humans. You know, and how do you see this? Because they're constantly what? They're constantly interrupting. Every single time you're talking to somebody, every time you're trying to have a decent, legitimate conversation, maybe you are finally being able to articulate your conversation. Knee-jerk accountability is out the window. Here we are, interrupting, making it feel as if the only reason why you stopped talking was so that you could take a breath. Red, what's going on? See, accountability plays a major part in the conversation, Shay says, as well as you have to understand your part and how you're affected other people and how the other people receive things. That's exactly what it is. You know, you guys, don't forget, I want to hear your comments. I want to see what you have to say, but I also want you to share this. Do me a favor right now. Stop what you're doing. Share this to a group. Share this to your page. I appreciate it deeply. Like this. Subscribe to this on YouTube. Instagram, come on, spread this around. Let's talk to some people about this. Facebook, we need some conversation going. This is the TruthSeekrz, and this particular segment is a series talking about relationships. And today, the person in the relationship that we're focused on is you. So listen, interrupting. There's nothing that makes you feel more disrespected, nothing that makes you feel more insulted, nothing that makes you feel like you want to get out of that conversation quicker than when you realize that this person is not even listening to what you have to say. So I'm saying this to you because for a reason. Because, you know, who do you do this? Like I told you before, and here's the thing that I really want you to get what I'm saying. All right, I want you to get this. This shouldn't be a misunderstanding. Watch this. Okay, if you are disrespecting your child by not listening, interrupting, and being rude to your child, this is a way that you are to the people you have the most informal relationships with, this is deeply who you are formally. This is deeply who you tend to be when the time has come for you to really show the kind of emotional, the emotional respect that you're supposed to, the emotional maturity that you should have. This is exactly when that happens. Shay says, be mindful of your words in a conversation, because most people take the words that you say and keep it. Yeah, they keep it retained in the back of their mind and they know it. Phyllis, what's happening? Mary, thank you for checking this out and tuning in. I want to say this so that there's no misunderstanding here. When you interrupt a person, you tell them bottom line that you have absolutely no appreciation for what they're saying. And if you've noticed that you're the kind of person who interrupts people, then you're going to have to enact a rule. This is a rule that I think really helps a lot of people, and that is the 3-second rule. So pause for 3 seconds and give somebody eye contact to let them know that you're about to speak. I mean, some of you, that might be the hardest thing you've personally ever did in your life. And that's okay, because you know what? Most people come from a situation where they weren't very well respected. Okay, they were always being interrupted. Your mama interrupted you, your grandmama interrupted you, your brothers interrupted you, your teacher interrupted you, your best friends interrupted you, everybody interrupted you. So what do? You accidentally, but always so consistently, do the wrong thing, which is jump out and blurt out your opinion on stuff. This is something that's hard, you know. This is often a sign of defensiveness too. I should point this out. Kenya, what's going on, Keith? Hope all is well. Yes, Shay says they don't want to be wrong. That's what it is. See, most people blurt out because of defensiveness. See, because they're defensive, they are guarding and protecting their words, protecting their position. Most people don't understand that it is almost always, watch and see what I'm saying here, it is almost always a fear-based response. Remember this. Most people have a real problem listening because it rubs too many fears that they had coming into the conversation, so they're not able to be the kind of person that they want to be in a conversation. And that destroys, that just decimates the possibility of a successful and positive conversation with a person who you claim to have strong feelings for, at least to the point where a sincere conversation should be expected or assumed. Yeah. This is one of the problems that we have, right? Time and space. Phyllis says we need those things. It's very important. See, I call that being real ADHD in a conversation. You know, because you have the attention deficit when it comes time to listen. You so ADD caught up into your next conversation. You can't even listen. You speedballing right to the next conversation. I've had 2 people in, couple sits down and talking to me. And the very first thing that I realized is neither one of them are giving each other the respect that they deserve as adults, let alone the respects that they deserve as being extremely important people in a 2-person relationship. You know, you're 50% as important. You know, sometimes when we think about this, if you had somebody who was going to invest into your company and they were going to invest 50%, okay? If they were going to invest 50%, would you be talking to them the same way that you talk to the person who's invested 50% into the relationship that you have right now? Or more importantly, if you were the investor, would you be expecting to be minimized, interrupted, and cut short when you were a 50% investor into whatever we were talking about? I think not, right? I think not. Ruth says, me being the youngest and the only girl and having 3 older brothers, they never felt like my voice mattered. Yeah, I know that's right. Yeah, you've been fighting ever since, huh? Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And that's the thing, too. Tammy says a lot of people do not want to listen because they are fearful of the truth. Man, listen. Why is it that we are so worried about hearing something that is clearly going on in the other person's brain? I mean, whether you hear it or not, it's actually transpiring in the thoughts of the significant person that you're talking to. Okay, and I say significant because remember, I don't care what kind of relationship we're talking about. How you practice is how you play. If you mistreat your coworker, if you mistreat your child, if you mistreat your spouse, it's the way that you mistreat almost every conversation and communication opportunity you have with the people that are most effective and most necessary in your life. This is something that we have to understand. This is something that's very correctable. I just want to point that out. Sad to say, some people don't listen to an elderly person. And you know, that's where we get so much about wisdom, right? And Phyllis says, because the truth hurts. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. You know, one of the things that I realize is that there is nothing worse. There's nothing worse in a relationship than knowing that somebody's not listening to you. Because when you are not listened, you're not valued. When you're not valued, you don't feel appreciated. When you don't feel appreciated, you don't feel confident. When you don't feel confident, it elicits core beliefs of insecurity. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But when you are insecure, when you're starting to feel like, you know what, I have no significance, I have no place of respect, I have no place of equal connectivity here, what ends up happening? You start to lose the strength that you had, the confidence you had in the relationship that is now deteriorating. And this is what I'm talking about. Again, in case you guys missed it, what we're really talking about today is we're talking about communication problems that have been ruining our relationships, and whether or not it's us. Here's what I'm saying to you. Bottom line, first and foremost, if you don't have a good understanding of what the core components are on listening, you really need to learn how to be an advanced listener. You really do. And I can talk to you a little bit more about that. And I think maybe we will talk a little bit more about that, because I think being an advanced listener is something that a lot of us struggle with. I mean, what it means to be an advanced listener is a lot different than a lot of people think. You know, Shay says they don't want to be transparent. They don't want to be vulnerable because it makes them feel or think that they can be used. Phyllis says when we have to face our own truths, wow, it's a real life check. Vermont says, and when they say not to talk over you, then they talk over you. Well, that's the thing, is when you listen, and it's good you pointed that out, because one thing that I found out is that people, and I'll say this again, people are very quick, watch this, they're very quick to tell you not to do almost the exact very same things they will do to you. See, that's why they're relevant. You know, my grandfather used to tell me, you can tell a thief by the size of the lock. You know, here's the truth about how that works out. See, whatever a person has an inclination to do is the very same thing that they would never want someone to do to them. So I'm always very leery. I'm always very, very cognizant of the things a person tells you not to do, because then it's like a stopwatch before you see them do it to you. And it's not their fault. Remember, it's never personal. You know, it's so very important to remember this, that we're talking about learned behaviors. And we're not talking about them so much as we're talking about us. You know, what does it take to be a true listener? I'm going to tell you right now, Phyllis. Here's what it takes. First and foremost, it takes listening with more than just your ears. And we started off by talking about that. Well, you know, what your bodies reflect how much you're listening. You know, I love the person who listens back like this. They way back in their seat. No, a real listener listens forward. They put their head forward. They're caring. They're concerned. They give a body language, an explanation with their entire self that they're interested and they are connected, and they are a 50% participant in the conversation. Breeze, what's going on? So here's what I'm saying to you guys, so there's no misunderstanding. All right, listening first and foremost is something done with more than just your ears. You got to make your mind focus and become more present. And these are things that, and you watch this, you guys know this is the truth. Watch. If I'm saying I'm listening, if I've got my eyes towards you listening, but if I'm not giving you the body language, the emotional mind focus, you know I'm not. You're like, oh man, you're not even listening to me. Shay says, having the ability to articulate your point without the hostility, the anger, and the negative connotations. Oh my God. Yeah, well, you know, and that's, again, we'll talk about that more. But being a good listener is being somebody who can really just chill in the moment and absorb the thoughts. James, what's happening? So I'll give you an example. An example is when somebody's saying something you really don't like and your body's cringing, but they have the right to talk to you because they're equal parts of your relationship. So you don't like what they're saying. You already know that this is a hot topic issue. But what do? You show a concern for the fact that they have an opinion. But that's hard. You know what's so hard about that? What's hard is that you have to get past yourself and connect to another person. When you are defensively, you're bunkered in to yourself. And that's where the real problem is, you guys. We need to do a better job of that. You do not plan what to say next. You know, you listen. You're not planning what to say next. You're listening. And then after you're listened, Then you speak. You don't use the conversation that they're having as a chance to reload your ammo on what you're going to say next. Because then we're no longer listening. We don't have it. We don't reflect back. You know, one of the best things that a person could ever do, I don't know if you've ever had a conversation. Watch this. So I'm having a conversation with somebody. And this is what I do, because professionally, you have to show people that you are there, that you are paying attention. When a person talks to me and they say something, what I say is just like when you were doing high school style writing and composition work. When there's a question, you start your answer by summarizing the question. Reflect back on what the person said within your own dialogue. So you said this to me, and then you speak. You said that you were really worried about the amount of time we're spending on the weekends together. You said you were really worried about whether or not I was taking our date nights as seriously as you are. You were saying you were really worried about whether or not I was giving you the kind of response back in the kind of time that it took for you to be prepared and ready for your job at work. Whatever the conversations is, but being able to reflect back and talk specifically, watch this, talk specifically about what issues were most important that you heard them say, and then to speak on those. That reflecting back is so deep. It shows so much currency to the conversation. Another thing that we sometimes do is we get a little sarcastic, so we don't ask good questions. You know, we don't ask good questions, and it's a way of showing people that you don't take what they're saying very, very seriously. We need to learn how to ask the right kind of questions to move a conversation forward. Some of our questions, and you know, here's Phyllis says, are they interested in where your heart is? You know, and that's an important question, because oftentimes I ask that question too. Is, okay, you see my lips moving, but do you hear my heart talking? Because that's what an effective listener is going to do. That's what somebody who really cares is going to do almost every time. You know, asking good questions means that you respect the person you're talking to. When's the last time you had a conversation and instead of just saying something just off the top of your neck, you slowed down for a second and thought about it? You said to yourself, okay, how exactly can I respond to this person so that they understand that I care about what they're saying, but I'm also asking the kind of questions that can move our conversation towards a place where we can connect. Bree says, great topic, Tom. A good time to meditate is when someone is talking. Focusing on your breathing can keep you in a state where you are truly open to consider with all your resources. Man, this is great. And for those of you who don't know, Fabrizio, he does a wonderful meditation. He's got so many of the healing body techniques down packed, and I agree with you. One of the things that you and I talked about was how important it was to really center your breathing when you're listening so that you can become more present. It's so good you brought that up too, because that's one of the things, you know, because then you're able to show empathy, which is another thing that needs to happen. You're able to empathize. You're able to show people that you care. See, when you can show empathy, you're saying to them, I'm not in your situation, but I have the emotional aptitude. I have the emotional ability to connect to what you're going through, because I can see how that could have affected me in a different but similar situation, right? You never want to say, I know exactly what you're going through, because that's an individual. Every individual goes through their own unique thing. What you can say is that I've also embraced an issue like that, and so I have empathy because I know that it's an obstacle. Here's a conversation very simply. A conversation is usually the ones that you do worst in are the ones that you A, trivialize, you don't take them to mean as much to you as it does to the person you're talking to, and B, you're defensive about. You know, these are some real situations. So these are the conversations, and you can think of maybe 5 of them that you had. One of them might have been whether or not you were going to help clean out this room. Another one might have been whether or not you guys were going to go over the bank account. Another one was whether or not you guys were going to sit down and look over some vacation spots. Another one might have been whether or not you guys were going to sit down and go over all the bills and make sure you know what was supposed to be spending and what ones aren't. These are extremely important conversations that one may take more serious than the other. Mary says, being present and in the moment with someone demonstrates the ultimate love, care, and respect. Okay, that is exactly what I'm saying in a nutshell. When you invest that kind of currency into the relationship, it shows it's something that you value highly. Philip says, I've been fighting a battle that didn't want to be won. Thank you, Lord, for helping me to see that. Well, you know, hey, it is truly a blessing when you know who you are in a situation. Candy says when you listen, you can learn from others and get an understanding about someone. I mean, come on. That's why we listen. But if you're just listening with your ears, you may miss it because some people may not have the best words, but they have the best hearts. And you got to listen to their hearts. You got to listen to their spirits. You got to listen to their thoughts. And again, showing empathy, not sympathy. You know, I always say the difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is when you pity somebody for going through something that you can't really relate to. That's sympathy. I got sympathy for you. I can't really relate to it, but I understand, you know, that's a you thing. But empathy is where you meet a person in the crossroads of those traumas and say, though you have a personal issue going right now, I empathize because I too have been through something similar to this. And when you say that, not with your mouth, but with your heart, where empathy lies, people understand the value that you listen. They get that you care deeply about what they have to say. And I think that's the most important thing. If you have something to share, you have to ask first. You know, like for instance, you know, I always say, hey, can I share this with you? Because I want you to know how I feel. And by letting people know that you have something to share, they realize that you're also putting value into the relationship. You know, you're also showing something. But the last thing, the most important, and this is the thing that I think a lot of us need to go back to, is understanding that it's all about keeping things between you and that person. Never, ever running your mouth about the conversations that you had. So making sure that you're not interrupting, making sure that you're never giving out information about what you're talking about. One of the things that I always have to talk about with these situations is our inability to remember that social media friends are not always the people you want to talk to. If you have one confidant, you may have one too many. I mean, the truth of the matter is we want to make sure that we're dealing with the conversation as it happens. Too many times we listen to the conversation, we don't share what's going on in the conversation, and then we run and the most you'll talk about that conversation is with another person. But that's something that we have to think about. Fabrizio says, also, the more you sidestep topics the others bring up, the keys likely will bring up any other topics, which also build more resentment and creates a loss of trust. Phyllis says, get your stuff together, then you can work with other people. Listen to yourself. And that's exactly, see, you got me 100%. Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about finding who we are in a relationship and seeing within ourselves if we are the ones who sometimes can be tearing down the quality of the relationship, the quality of the conversation, diminishing the relationship. Here's the one thing I don't like. I think that most people understand this. It is completely corrosive to a conversation if you're not willing to give your emotions, if you're not willing to share how you feel, if you're not willing to be able to be honest, to bring your heart to a conversation. Some of you, I'm going to tell you the truth. We get upset. See, and the one thing that we have to understand, people, because we're all capable of really getting our mental and emotional discipline together. Without self-love, you can't love another person. That is right, Phyllis. Here's the thing that I say, and I say this to you so you understand this very clearly. All right? Here's the thing. You have to be able to express how you feel. Most people are protective of their feelings because they fear something. All right, and you'll hear me say this, all right? Almost all of the inconsistencies in our emotions and our thinkings are based on beliefs, and these beliefs are rooted in fear, okay? And if you're not willing to share your feelings, it shows you have no strength, no confidence, no equity into a relationship. You have to be able to articulate the way you feel. Too many people feel like, you know what? Oh, he's a man, so he's not going to speak on how he feels. Don't start that precedent. Don't allow that to become the conversation piece, the lockhold to how things are done. That's not a very healthy way of going about things. It's because what you really don't understand is most men suffer from an inability to communicate. When relationships end, actually, believe it or not, men have been known to have exceedingly longer traumatic effects towards breakups. I don't care if they're the ones who initiated it. So please understand this. There is absolutely no credibility in utilizing any excuse for why it is you can't share your emotions. Because if you're not willing to share your emotions, listen, You're not willing to be a part of that relationship. Some of you, I'm talking to you, but I'm not talking to you in a shaming way. Some of you, your lifestyle, your culture, your upbringing has minimized your ability to express yourself. You had to tighten up who you were. You had to pretend to be somebody stronger. You had to protect yourself. And it's not your fault, but it's now your reality. And you are trying to have a happy life. Well, if you're trying to have a happy life, you're going to have to work on the things that have become monkey wrenches in your own way of dealing with the people you care about. Phyllis says, ain't nobody like me. I'm thankful for what's for me and what is yours. Yes, that's right, because what is yours indeed. Shay says you need to be able to understand what emotions you are trying to express, and knowing that it's fear and it's anger. You've got to be able to know these things. You know, one of the things that I think is really the worst problem in relationships, and I probably say that about every one of these, because I totally see so many issues. Here's the one that bothers me more than anything else. You know, is not being able to say what you really need. Okay. One of my conversation pieces, one of the things I always ask is, okay, so what do we need to do? What do you need to see happen in order for you to feel like this conversation was beneficial? Some people get to the problem and never get to the point. Okay, fine, you are great at articulating the problem. Okay, you've given 17 different descriptive definitions as to where the problem was, but when it comes to coming up with something that is definitive, something that is going to tell the person what it is you need. Some days you say, you know, the problem is I need a hug, but I don't know how to say that. I have to say, you know what? You're not listening to me enough. We're not talking enough. You're becoming somebody who is so defensive in your fear of not getting the emotional connectedness that you need. And we start to go on about a problem and not about a need. So here's the thing that I say, you know, on the other end of the communication spectrum is always going to be the unwillingness to tell a person exactly what it is you need. Come on, you guys. You know what I'm talking about. This is one of the problems that I really think it's got something to do with codependent behaviors we talked about before, overgiving, not knowing how to receive. And another thing is, like I say, passive aggressive behavior, where, you know, it's just part of a really toxic personality trait that's easy to fix. Don't get me wrong, but it's one of the issues that we have. Shay says, I try not to go to bed knowing that I'm angry, that I didn't get my point across, or I didn't express it. And that's, I think, is the most important thing. Avoiding, yes, conflict adverse, avoiding conflict. You know, here's the thing that's very important, is that you have to be able to walk through some conversations that are going to involve emotional stability and strong thinking. But you have to have, as Mary said, you have to have a nice confidence in who you are in the relationship you built. You have to be away from this fear of rejection, this fear of not being respected, this fear of somebody hearing the true needs that you have and deciding that they shouldn't have to invest. Shay says, what is in our relationship is a resolution of this argument. What is in that relationship? Write that out so I know what you're saying. No one can read the heart and mind. You have to be able to express yourself. And see, this is the thing that's so very important too, is that when you start to watch the feelings, the expressions, the body language, the language that we have, then you start to be able to articulate your language a little bit more descriptive too. See, most people who have a hard time talking, most people who have a hard time expressing themselves also have a hard time perceiving when somebody else is trying to express themselves. You know, and one of the things that ends up happening is that when you are not paying attention to body language, when you are not paying attention to what's happening with other people outside of their words, you start to close your body language. You know, you have a tendency to cross your arms. You know, you got all of these things that's hiding who you are. You're paddling your back. You're doing all these different things because you're not aware of the body language conversation that's going on the other side. It's easier to run from problems because they are easier to deal with than to run from them and than it is to talk. You know, and again, the reason why is not because we don't want to talk about them. It's because when we talk about them, they usually get us further into emotional chaos because we don't have a strategy. We don't have a confidant. Now, mind you, a lot of these conversations you still have. Now, it's important to point this out. A lot of these conversations you'll have with a girlfriend. You'll have with your best friend. You'll have, if you're a guy, you'll have it with one of your buddies, or you have it with your mama. You have it with some other person that you've gotten this kind of credibility with, who has learned to take you at the lulls of all of your poor communication habits, and you feel more confident to speak to them. But we have to start to learn to navigate through the hard parts of the conversation with the people that we love by showing a willingness. And this is all about what we're talking about today. Showing a willingness to be able to give more than just your opinion in a conversation. Or to start the conversation off with, first of all, like you are checking somebody. First of all, this is what that's exactly what I mean. Because that brings me to my next one, which is being too direct. You know, sometimes we can just be a little too insensitive to how things will be received. And so we always have this tendency to believe. Now remember, this is based on a false belief system. See, this is a system that you can correct. This is a system that is easy to change, but you have to understand that it's there. You have to understand that you're dealing with something that needs to be corrected. See, one of these things is just being too direct. And when you hear people who are direct, they'll say, you know, a lot of people don't like me because I say how I feel. Well, that's not true. A lot of people just don't like the way you say how you feel. That's a difference. Vermont says this is why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You're supposed to listen twice the amount. Listen more. You're right about that, man. You're right. And Mary says, having a conversation with the safe friend than with the person you need to be open with, honest and vulnerable with. I mean, this is what it is. We get these we get these insecurities, okay? And they're all based on negative belief systems, core beliefs that are fear-based. And we need to break through them by giving the first step. Again, remember this. This isn't what's wrong with them. Oftentimes, we need to give a deeper critique of who we're bringing to the table and ask ourselves, watch this, I'm going to ask myself, is this the me that I'm bringing to the table here? I mean, am I the person who's being too direct? Am I the person who doesn't want to exert the energy, the emotional energy to tell you how I feel? If I'm the person who's not listening, if I'm the person who's talking too much, am I the person? Because if I am that person, if I'm being that person, then I'm creating the kind of relationship that nobody else wants to be a part of. And again, being too direct is one of the primary things. Not having tact, decorum with your words, an awareness of the emotional being that's there, because you are an emotional being first. Most people don't understand that. But all the layers of your brain start off emotional, right? These emotions, we call them it's based on these desires. These are the desires that you have, all right? You have the desire to fight something, to either eat it, either to have sex with it, or to run from it. That's it. All right. Those are the 4, I call them the 4 core beliefs that the brain is built on. And from there, we have an emotional stimulation. That's the mammalian brain. First, it's our reptilian brain with those 4, and then it's our mammalian brain that's got all these emotions connected to it, and we can become emotional. But then we have that human factor. That's our cognitive learning. That's our frontal lobe. That's our ability to process things in a coherent way that allows us to articulate what emotions, allows us to introspect those emotions, and allows us to give meaningful dialogue through listening and through very thoughtful responses. This is what's missing right now today in so many of our core ways of thinking. This is who we're willing to be until, things get a little tight. As soon as things get tight, then we kind of adapt back into these negative patterns and behaviors. Yep, that's right. Swift to listen and slow to speak. This is old wisdom. It is sure the truth. And here's another thing is when you're the opposite of being too direct, Some of you guys, you know these people. I mean, when they finally talk, you more confused than when they started speaking. Some people, they don't articulate themselves well. They don't get to where the real problem is. I mean, they go into such, they call it a tangent, where they're just kind of like so off topic. You know, they're so ambiguous with all of these different emotional overswellings that they haven't started to really think. And it confuses people. It confuses people so badly. So one of the things that we have to really watch is the people who, unfortunately, and you know there's these people, you know who they are. You know, sometimes we consider them people who are just emotionally all over the place because they can't tell you anything. Emotionally, they just ran on. I mean, they say so many different things that you end up confused. Like, hold on, which one is it? Are we supposed to be doing this or are we supposed to be doing that? Because that's a person who's caught so deep into their feelings that they haven't really had a chance to think about it. Tommy, what's going on? Shay says becoming too common with the person they're talking to. Yeah, sometimes, you know, it's just unfortunately, we forget the value. We have to constantly remind ourselves. That's why it's so important for us to do this. See, so many people think that, oh, I show my significant friend, or I show my good friend at work, or I show, you know, my best friend from high school, I show these people that I care about, I'm sending them a card, blah, blah, blah. But I'm telling you, the greatest currency, the greatest gift, the greatest, most valuable prize that you can award any person that you deeply care about is meaningful engagement in a common, regularly occurring conversation where you deeply get to know that person and not become so common with them that you think through a few conversations, now you know them so well that you don't have to reinvest yourself into that conversation. This is where we really see that these are issues, you know, and I don't know about you, but when a person speaks to me, I like to know that they thought about what they're saying and that there just wasn't some emotional rant. Remember this, when you wait until you're emotionally all over the place to speak to somebody, very few people have the ability to take what you're saying seriously because typically you're not articulating yourself in a very specific way and you're more emotionally driven than you are thoughtful. And that's why when you are an emotional wreck, don't try to have a conversation. When you're on a phone and you know that there's a little bit of, emotion overwhelming in your voice, don't try to have that conversation then. You are not going to show the kind of respect, the kind of integrity in the conversation that you really would want to. You're not going to be able to show that you have the kind of commitment to the individual when you're in a situation where all of a sudden I'm just full of anger, I'm just full of angst, and I'm just full of getting this out of my feelings, out of my thoughts. And this is where we get into a problem because then we start confusing people because we haven't really given that kind of conversation to. You know, one of the things I think people don't understand is that there are specific rules to a relationship. You know, a relationship that's really got good currency, a relationship that's really valuable is a relationship where you feel accepted and you feel respected for who you are. You know, I don't know about you, but that's the kind of relationship that you want to be a part of. And when you have that kind of relationship, when you communicate, you have to communicate an acceptance of the individual. Not just, you know, I'm willing to like the things that I like about you, but an acceptance of the entire individual with the ability to understand that it's through respect that you can have an acceptance of that person's differences and making sure that this isn't a toxic person. You want to make sure that you can respect and accept that person too. So you got to do your homework. You got to take your time and make sure, and we'll talk about this in another conversation about how we know whether we're building the right relationships. You want to know that you feel safe. You want to always put that out in your conversation. I want to make sure that the person I'm talking to, they feel safe in the conversation that we're having in this conversation right now. I'm going to show I care. This is why I try to stay even. Yes, sir. We can't get high with the highs, can't get lows with the lows. And, you know, you want to make sure that you feel supported. When I'm talking to somebody, I like to know that I have the support of the person that I'm talking to. But that means that I then have to show the kind of support that that person's looking for too. You understand what I'm saying? I too have to show the support that I'm looking for. And you have to give and take on an equal level. And that's just an important thing. And that's why you can't dominate the conversation. That's why you can't, just sit there and allow a person, watch this, allow a person to pour their heart out and you just look there as if you have no emotional capacity at ever. Candy says, you're so right. That when I'm emotional, my son tells me to calm down and give me 10 minutes to get it together. Because you know what? When our emotions pull us, and remember this, the core part of your brain, the most controlling part of your brain is the emotional part of your brain. Okay? And you have to understand it. And it takes a lot of discipline. This is why Freeze was talking about the importance of meditating while a person's talking. That means calming down all of the conversations in your mind so that you can better listen, okay, and pull yourself together. And you want to make sure that that you can trust and that you feel trusted in the conversation. You have an identity and a life that a person respects outside of just the one person that you have become with this person. They understand that when you talk to them, you represent the fullness of you. Not just the part of you that they think they know and can understand. No, they have to respect. You have to respect that you're talking to a person who doesn't wake up your friend and go to sleep your friend, but has multiple relationships, has a respect, has a life, has all these things outside of you, and that you respect the fullness of this person when you're sitting down engaging with them. Too many times, the only person you want to know is the part that deals with you. And that's a very limiting experience. It's something that makes a person not feel like they're a regular person when they're around you. See, because the real identity they have is somehow suppressed, and you never seem to get that. And I think that this is how you can navigate through any form of negative conversations that you have. I think this is the way that you can honestly say, listen, I don't just respect the you that I'm in a relationship with, but I respect the you that goes to work every single day. I respect the you that goes out and does the things that matters to you. I respect the entire person that you have become and that you are becoming. And I respect your evolution, and I respect all of the hard work that you put in on a regular basis. When you can honestly accept that individual with that kind of totality, when you can bring that to the table, the beauty of that is that you can then put that expectation on the table for you as well. I mean, think about this. Now, I understand, I respect, I accept, I love you for who you are. But it's not just who you are with me. It's who you are from the first to your last experiences. From the areas that you were developing, that you were trying to get better in, the areas that you've had to put off a little bit because you're trying to develop in specific areas, all of the past development, all of the past experiences, all of the past trauma, all of the past success. I take all of these things, I bring them to the table, and I say, this is the individual I'm talking to. Let me give them the dignity to show that somebody who's got that much capacity is worthy of when they sit down with somebody who I feel has that much capacity to. And this is the reason why so many of us, we struggle, y'all. We truly struggle. We struggle to find the kind of relationship foundation that we really want. But I don't think we have to deal with that anymore. I am so encouraged, you guys, so thankful for the dialogue, the responses, and the conversations that we had. I'll ask you again, remember, make sure you comment, but most importantly, share. Let's get this conversation out and talk to other people. This was a wonderful conversation, and I hope you go back and check out the parts that you missed. I hope that you engage. Give me a little dialogue. I always check. I'm always glad to respond. Anybody who's interested in talking further, want to talk, hit me on that direct message. Remember, this is always on TruthSeekrz Facebook page, TruthSeekrz. If you ever can, I'd love for you to hop over to TruthSeekrz. Make sure that you like the page, and if you ever get the chance, watch that page, because that page, the more people that I get to watch, TruthSeekrz YouTube, TruthSeekrz Instagram, TruthSeekrz Facebook, if you watch that page more, then that starts to become part of other people's network feed or whatever it is. So hopefully you'll check that out. Thank you so very much. Remember, my next show is on Sunday. Sunday Conversation is a big show. Sunday Conversation is all about knowing who you are in your spiritual walk in life. Remember, this isn't a religious show. We don't do religion. We do a relationship with the divine. It is exciting. Exciting, exciting. Thank you guys so very much. I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. I'll have a different backdrop. Hey, leave something and let me know what you think about the informal look. Again, I'll tell you what I said in the beginning, and that is that my very, very awesome image consultant told me that I need to kind of lose the monkey suit and just kind of kick it and just look normal. So I thought today I'd go really normal and just hit me with a nice little V-neck t-shirt. Hey, well, I'm going to be switching it up a little bit. I'm also going to be switching up the backdrop. We'll try some different things. Hey, thank you guys so very much. Talk to you soon. Peace.